David Cameron is accused of fucking a pig in the face with his posh cock. Fucking a dead pig with his posh cock. But the thing is, anybody else on the planet, you'd go, fucked a pig, fuck off. With David Cameron, you can just picture it like that. Maybe it's because his face does look like a cooked ham. You sort of associate the two, I guess. But it takes no imagination at all for you to go, David Cameron fucking a pig. Yeah, I can see it. I can picture him doing it in a tuxedo with a small glass of sherry, or even better, just a small glass of job seeker's blood. You know, George Osborne there cheering him on. Come on, Davo! You know, you got Boris in the background nonchalantly looking on with some horsey woman draped over him. You know, he's pretending to act thick, but secretly he's plotting to take over the world. You know, these people run the fucking country. You've got the Prime Minister, you've got the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and you've got the Mayor of London, and they're like, you know, I mean, when I was at university, right, we used to go for a drink at the student union. These people, where they socialised, right, you had to wear a £5,000 tuxedo, and you had to fuck a pig's face just to get through the fucking door.
Downing Street is in hot water over allegations that it attempted to sweep under the rug the arrest of a close aide of the Prime Minister over a child pornography probe. The official, part of whose role was to advise online porn filters, was reportedly warned that police were investigating him hours before he was detained. RT's Laura Smith has the details.
His name is Patrick Rock, and he is in fact, though, a veteran Conservative Party advisor, David Cameron's Deputy Chief of Staff. He's been called Cameron's fixer, and he's had what one might call unparalleled access to power over a very long time, over the last 4 decades, right there in the heart of government. The irony lies in the fact that he's also been closely involved in drawing up government policy on internet pornography filters, and this is a man who was arrested recently on suspicion of what everybody's calling an offence related to child abuse images. So not just pornography, but what appears to be child pornography. Now, his arrest happened on February the 12th, and he then resigned, but this was all on the quiet. Downing Street appears to have covered it up until it was confronted with it now. So for the last 3 weeks, no one's known anything about this, but apart from the Prime Minister, who apparently has known for 3 weeks, he said he was very concerned that the matter should be handled correctly, that he didn't want to brief preemptively on a criminal investigation against a member of his staff. But his critics, who are mainly Labour members of Parliament, so opposition, say that this raises a number of questions. For example, what level of security did Patrick Rock have? Is there other stuff that we don't know about? It's also emerged, by the way, that Rock had previously been accused of sexual harassment, which was dealt with by his boss at Downing Street, so a political figure rather than a civil servant figure, not very usual. So again, some sort of oddity going on there. The Prime Minister's being accused of a cover-up, and his Labour critics say that this undermines the entire credibility and effectiveness of the government.
My opinion on Kenneth Clarke, apart from what is in the media, is based on stuff that's been brought to us at our protests. On 4 separate protests, we've had different people come to us and say that Kenneth Clarke used to take a minibus from children's homes down to London, and they used to stay in a flat over the weekend, be abused and come back, and they'd be totally messed up from the drugs that they'd been forced upon them. Then I actually got one that said to me that where Kenneth Clarke took them was a block of flats behind Pimlico Station. He said there was a big square courtyard in the middle. That square courtyard I can positively identify as being Dolphin Square. Dolphin Square is at the heart of the Westminster investigations.
When I was working for the Cook Report, I encountered Kenneth Clarke MP, and when I did so, when I met him at Ian Greer's office, he molested me.
Yeah. How did he molest you?
He put his hand on my penis and kept it there.
Right.
Over my trousers.
Yeah.
We were chatting, and it was all very pleasant. I was sent by the Cook Report, and just incidentally, just to give you some background on the Cook Report, the story was the Cash for Questions story, which was about the idea that politicians were paid to ask questions in the Houses of Parliament, and which was circumventing democracy.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so we were there investigating that. I was to play a part of a businessman as assistant, a businessman's assistant, who basically was this 15-year-old kid. Now I was 18, but the producers said, look, you know, these are politicians, to grease the wheels. Can you say that you're 15? Because we know they're like young boys. And that was a fact. That was what the producers, the Cook Report, knew for a fact.
To get you the part?
Well, to get in with these politicians and people that we were speaking to.
Yeah.
That they thought if I said that I was 15. Now, at the time, I looked very young. I was a child actor. I was 18 years old. I was still playing children of 15 and 14 because that's how young I looked, and so this seemed a very logical thing. So I didn't question it. I was a child actor. They were always saying lie about your age in some way or other for whatever part. You know, they want a 15-year-old, but you're 13 or something. You know, so say you're 15. So to me that wasn't unusual. So I went to deliver, I think, a letter to Ian Greer, who was the political lobbyist at the centre of this scandal. Because he was the one who was hooking up all the politicians and the business people together for this corruption. And basically to say that we were going to hire the company, you know, we've paid X amount of money to them already, we're going to pay some more and use his services to try and get down to the Prime Minister, John Major. If we could pay money to meet the Prime Minister, that would be a major thing. Yeah. And so I took that letter, met Kenneth Clarke, and Ian Greer, when I walked into the room, said, Ben Fellows, meet Kenneth Clarke, MP. Now, Kenneth Clarke says that it was mistaken identity.
Oh, right.
Well, the point is, I was introduced to him by his mate Ian Greer. Yeah. So whose identity are we mistaken about? Yeah. Is Kenneth Clarke isn't sure of his identity, or is Ian Greer not sure of Kenneth Clarke, his friend's identity? Yeah. I was introduced to him, so I have no idea. Yeah. You know, it looked like Kenneth Clarke to me. You know, I was a kid, I wasn't very much into politics at the time. Yeah. So I was doing the acting thing of being very pleasant and nice, and they offered me alcohol straight away. They knew how old I was. They said, how old are you? I said I was 15 years old, and they offered me a drink. I think I had 2 drinks there, and at some point I was directed to look at a picture. So
you was 18, but you told them you was 15?
That's right, yeah.
So when you met Kenneth Clarke, you told him...
I was 15 years old, what school 15. I went to,
right.
Things I was into, you know, kid talk. I was wearing a suit, so I looked all kind of, you know, prim and proper, as it were. And so...
and who sent you there?
The producers of the Cook Report. And they sent me there to deliver this message, knowing full well that Ian Greer liked young boys because his partner at the time was a mixed race guy, I think in his 40s. Right. So obviously I'm a mixed race kid. Yeah. He was gonna, you know, I was candy floss to this guy. Yeah. So I was directed to look at a picture in the office, and Kenneth Clarke was there, and Ian Greer was there. And as I looked at this picture, Kenneth Clarke turned around to me, and with his right hand he cupped my genitals and kept them there. And that was it. Casual questions, as far as I was involved in it, was that we were posing as wealthy business people. I was the assistant to another businessman.
How old was you?
Well, I was 18, but I was playing 15.
Yeah.
And so our act in front of Ian Greer was to try and convince him with money, basically 10 grand envelopes filled with 10 grand going off to Ian Greer, to introduce us to prominent politicians so that we could get our business interests pushed forward onto in front of the government. Now,
and was this through the Cook Report?
And this was through the Cook Report. Now,
right.
If you're a normal person, what you have to do is go to your MP, lobby your MP. Your MP then, if he thinks that, you know, the trees down your road, you know, shouldn't be cut, will go into the Houses of Parliament, and at Prime Minister's questions will table a question, and that puts it onto the agenda of the Prime Minister and of the government of the day to solve. Well, if you could just get a businessman to pay £50,000 to a politician, or 10 grand, or put them in a hotel and all this kind of stuff to get that, well, that you're circumventing democracy. They haven't spoken to Kenneth Clarke MP, and they said they wouldn't be speaking to him because he was above the law. Yeah, they wouldn't be speaking to Ian Greer because he's in South Africa. In actual fact, I told them though he was in South Africa, they actually didn't know. And so I said the 2 people that were in the room with me, you haven't spoken to, but you've spoken to people that weren't even there, or have something to lose. They admit sending me. Yeah, they just don't admit what happened in the room. Now, the interesting thing is that it was videotaped because it was the Cook Report. We videotaped everything. So we had a jacket camera and we had a suitcase camera. And when I was in the room, the suitcase camera I think went on the sofa opposite, and I had the jacket camera on. Now you can't see anything with the jacket camera because obviously someone comes in and touches you that way. But on the suitcase camera, you saw it. And when I got the tapes back to the, we were staying in a place called the Hyde Park Residence, they played the tapes, and the producers sat there and they watched it, and I watched it. So I know that they knew that they had been molested by Kenneth Clark MP, you know, and they were shocked and said, "Well, like, well done, Ben," you know.
You know, the point about the Kenneth Clark MP molesting you like that, it just goes to show that you weren't the only one. That's not the first time he's done that in his life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's 100%.
So let's not go for the one, you know, it's like the historical abuse. You know, we hate that term because yesterday was history. So, you know, this guy, if he'd done this to Ben would not, because it's the arrogance of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what, and like they own you. First time you ever met him, and he done that.
Yeah. Now the thing is that because it's on tape, we watched the tapes. Now, what was interesting was that during the Cook report, we got down to basically meeting John Major, the Prime Minister. Now, John Major knew what we were doing, found out about it, and got Carlton Television, Carlton Communications, to buy Central Television to get hold of the Cook report tapes, to get hold of the tape of Kenneth Clark molesting me in Ian Greer's office as well. So these tapes were taken by Carlton Communications.
Where's that film footage?
Well, this is what I'm getting to. John Major said, well, the scandal was so huge it was going to bring down the Conservative government. Got Carlton Communications, who was a client of Ian Greer at the time, to do him a favour, which was to buy Central Television, which we were planning to do anyway, but much later. Because they were going to buy sort of all the little small independent television stations.
So you could get that film footage?
To get that film footage. Now, the man who did the actual getting of the tapes was Prime Minister David Cameron. He worked for Carlton Communications. He was Michael Green, the CEO's right-hand man, and he handled it. So when the police went to David Cameron to say about questioning Kenneth Clark, guess what he said? No. So the Prime Minister is actually covering up for Kenneth Clark because he's the guy who, when he was in private business, got the tapes from Central for Carlton and for Prime Minister of the Conservative Party.
There were people at the very highest level of the United Kingdom government who actually enjoyed brutalising children, and certainly Jimmy Savile is one of them. Jimmy Savile, incidentally, was a necrophiliac. Do you know what that is, Phil?
Yeah, it means that he enjoys abusing corpses.
2027, Marine links Father Cameron Serco to Bilderberg Washington Post, Westminster pedophile ring, Plum City, abledanger.net, July the 9th, 2014. United States Marine Phil McConnell has linked David Cameron's father, the late Ian Cameron, and Serco's crony outsourced government contracts to Bilderbergers from the Washington Post and the Westminster pedophile ring. The Cray twins that ran organised crime in London during the 50s and 60s. They were jailed for life in 1969, and then amazingly, Phil, they ran, I believe, in a joint venture with Ian Cameron, David Cameron's father, the Westminster pedophile ring. Going back to Ian Cameron in the 1980s, he would have been, through his connections, in particular Tom Stacey, who's the founder of the Offenders Tag Association, in direct connection with the Crays, and able to dial up a little boy or a little girl to entertain a politician or a member of the royal family. And of course it would be disgusting to interact with a child at that age anyway, but the prime purpose, and they'll try and divert us from this, is to entrap these adults and then blackmail them and extort them. Obama's mother was pimping him in the Lahore Hilton in around the 1981 as part of this Westminster pedophile ring, but that's kind of an aside.